Hey guys, tonight we journey back to the vast, wind-swept grasslands of Central Asia. The sun rises low over the horizon, throwing long gold shadows across endless plains of frost-bitten steppe. Your breath fogs in the icy air. Somewhere outside, a horse snorts impatient. You're in a Mongol gur, a rounded felt tent with just enough warmth to fool you into thinking this might be survivable. But as you groggily stretch beneath coarse woolen blankets, reality creeps in. You are about to experience a full day in the Mongol Empire. And spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it where you are? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The flap of your gear opens with a loud thwop, and icy air invades like an unwelcome ghost. A grizzled old herder barks something in Mongolian points at the rising sun, and then at your boots, left unlined, damp, and very regrettable. You fumble to your feet, bones creaking like an abandoned wagon. Your breath fogs again. You're layered in wool and animal skins, but somehow it's still not enough. The temperature is somewhere between your eyelashes might freeze, and your soul just left your body. And the day hasn't even started. Out here on the steppe, there is no such thing as sleeping in. The Mongols live and move with the rhythm of the herd. You're expected to rise at dawn, help tend to the animals, dismantle the tent, and prepare for migration because, of course, it's moving day. Again, you stumble outside and immediately step in something squishy. Horse dung. Of course. The steppe doesn't care about your bare minimum sleep schedule. It cares about efficiency, endurance, and not dying of exposure. You look around, dozens of gurs dot the plains, some already half dismantled. Smoke curls from low chimneys. Kids are herding goats like tiny, terrifying drill sergeants. You, meanwhile, are standing there like you just crash-landed in a survivalist boot camp. Your gear is modest, maybe 10 feet across, held together with wooden lattice walls and heavy felt panels. It's surprisingly windproof, but the insulation. Let's just say it's about as effective as wearing a wet towel in a snowstorm. There's a small stove inside fueled by dried animal dung, efficient and odoriferous. Last night you tried to sleep beside it, but the fire went out. You didn't dare relight it. Fire etiquette is strict. Here fuel is scarce and it's bad form to waste it on pampered visitors who can't even milk a mare. And you really can't. That task awaits you later. For now, the daily routine begins with a morning call that is half prayer, half roll call. The eldest woman in the clan sings a melodic chant, asking for blessings, clear skies, and compliant livestock. You try to hum along. A nearby child scowls at you. You stop. Your first task of the day, help fetch water. Except the nearest water source is a half-frozen creek 2 kilometers away. You're handed a wooden bucket with a rope handle and a look that says, "Don't spill a drop." As you trudge out into the brittle grass, the wind picks up sharp, dry, endless. You're walking against it like a medieval treadmill. Each step makes your legs ache. Your knees are already questioning life choices. Along the way, you pass several herders returning with steaming buckets, their ponies laden with ice chunks. They barely acknowledge you. Out here, survival is a full-time job, no time for chit-chat. By the time you reach the creek, your fingers are stiff, and your face feels like a parchment scroll left out in the sun. You break through a thin film of ice, gather what you can, and begin the uphill march back. You spill some. You pretend you didn't. The smell of camp smoke, sweat, and animal fur hits your nostrils before you arrive. You're greeted with a grunt and immediately told to help untether the herd. You don't know how. You try. A sheep headbutts you. Twice. Mongol livestock don't coddle beginners. Your boots squelch as you move. Your coat's inner lining is soaked from condensation, and you realize something. This is just the start of the day. And here's a fun fact. Despite what Hollywood might imply, the Mongols didn't live like wild marauders 24/7. Daily life was deeply structured with responsibilities divided by gender, age, and skill. Women often ran the household and made decisions, while the men rode off to trade hunt or make war. And their ability to adapt to survive with minimal resources in one of the world's harshest climates is still studied by survivalists and military planners alike. But historians still argue whether their rigid seasonal routines were born from necessity or cultural preference. Some claim it was all pragmatic, move the herds where the grass grows. Others believe there was a deeply spiritual element tied to land, sky, and ancestral routes. You're too cold to care about that now. You just want breakfast, which, as you'll soon learn, is a whole new adventure. You're not quite sure what you expected Mongol breakfast to be, maybe a warm porridge, something comforting. Instead, you're handed a bowl of fermented mare's milk and a hardened lump of what looks and tastes like goat-flavored chalk. It's called arul, and it's a dried dairy product made by leaving curds out in the sun until they petrify. It clinks in your bowl like pebbles. Your teeth consider unionizing. You pretend to nibble. The fermented milk arag fizzes on your tongue like off-brand yogurt soda, with a faint kick of something suspiciously alcoholic. You glance around. Everyone else downs it like it's a protein shake. You try to match their pace, but end up choking a little. The child from earlier sees you sputter and whispers something to his brother. They both giggle, loudly. Breakfast is brief. Food is fuel, not ceremony. And you soon learn that complaining or even hesitating is a rookie mistake. In the Mongol Empire, nothing is wasted, not time, not food, not energy. You don't get to be the largest contiguous land empire in history by lounging around critiquing dairy textures. Now it's time to prove you're not entirely useless. The clan's eldest horseman gestures for you to follow him. You trudge after boots squelching again and arrive at a loosely tethered horse who looks less like a noble steed and more like a grumpy mop with hooves. Mongol horses are small, stocky, and borderline feral compared to modern breeds. This one immediately tries to nip your arm. The horseman laughs and tosses you a saddle, wooden, heavy, and thoroughly unpadded. Mounting it is an ordeal, riding it worse. Within 5 minutes, your lower back develops a personality and begins sending you hate mail. Your thighs scream. Your knees question your faith. You hang on while the horse jogs lazily around the camp, as if mocking you with each step. Eventually, the herder reins you in, visibly unimpressed. You dismount with the grace of a sack of flour and promptly fall on your side. Nobody helps. A few goats gather to watch. Then comes your real assignment, milking the mares. You're handed a rope and a wooden pail. The mares are corralled just outside camp, tied loosely in a line. The process is precise and efficient. First, the foal is brought near to stimulate milk flow, then gently pulled aside while you, trembling like a leaf, try to coax warm, frothy milk into a sloshing pail. Your first attempt results in a kick, your second in a mess. By the third, you get a thin stream going and feel a surge of pride. until the foal wails and the mare decides she's had enough. Fun historical note: mare's milk wasn't just breakfast juice. It was fermented, stored, traded, and considered medicinal. Genghis Khan himself reportedly drank it daily. But historians still argue whether it held true nutritional superiority or if the reverence was mostly cultural and symbolic. You're leaning toward the latter as your stomach does backflips. You return the pail, now half full and very foamy. The camp elder nods once, and for a brief moment you feel accepted. Then he hands you a shovel and points at a large mound of something brown and steaming. Yes, it's your turn to collect dried dung for fuel. The gathering process is rustic. You walk the perimeter of the camp, scooping firm, sun-dried cakes into a basket, trying not to inhale too deeply. The scent is ever present, like a cologne of suffering. Your boots are caked with slush, and your gloves are stiff. Every few minutes, someone passes you with a heavier load, moving faster, smiling even. You realize they find this normal. You, on the other hand, feel like you've aged a decade since dawn. As you dump your basket near the stove, you hear drumming. Not loud, but steady like a heartbeat beneath the wind. You follow the sound to a circle of women seated on low stools, weaving, singing softly and pounding dried herbs. One stirs a thick paste over a fire, an ointment maybe, or something medicinal. Mongol medicine blends shamanic rituals with practical remedies, animal fats, herbs, and pressure points. One woman invites you to sit. She smears a dark salve on your wind-burned cheeks. It smells like pine and horsehair. You thank her. She laughs gently, patting your arm. You're still the camp's clumsiest honorary guest, but you're less of a stranger now. Here's your fringe fact of the day. Mongol tents or gurs were often arranged in strict patterns, honoring cardinal directions, the status of the family, and spiritual beliefs. The door always faced south. The male side of the ger held saddles, weapons, and tools. The female side kept food, cooking gear, and clothes. The center was sacred. It was said if you tripped and touched the central post, bad luck would follow unless you made an offering. You remember this too late as you stumble over that very post, back in your ger, sending a basket of dried cheese flying. The family watches in silence. You mutter an apology. Someone throws a cheese lump at your head. It bounces, lightly. The sun begins to sink. Already the day feels both eternal and impossibly fast. The light stretches golden over the steppe, casting long, low shadows. Fires are lit. The clan prepares for the evening meal, sizzling mutton, thick noodles, maybe a broth if you're lucky. You're given a bowl. It's warm. It's salty. It tastes like redemption. As you sit cross-legged inside the ger cheeks, tingling fingers, blistered stomach finally full, a kind of peace settles in. You survived. Barely. The air outside howls, but here, inside this rounded, wind-proof world, you're part of something. Even if just for a day, your sleep is not exactly restful. The ger creaks gently in the wind, and the thick felt walls seem to breathe with every gust. The air inside is warm but dry, filled with the smell of singed wool, old meat, and whatever your boots have tracked in. You lie curled on a rough mat beside the stove, clutching a coarse wool blanket that itches like betrayal. Every time you shift, something pokes you, a pebble, a twig, your own regrets. Morning comes early, as it always does on the steppe. There are no roosters here, just the grumble of people waking, the snort of horses, and someone hawking up something alarming outside. You blink crusted eyes open and sit up slowly, groaning like a floorboard. Your back sends a formal complaint to your brain. You're immediately put to work again because of course you are. Today's task: help prepare for a hunt. You're led to the edge of camp, where the warriors are already tightening saddle straps and checking their composite bows. These aren't your average medieval weapons. Mongol bows are masterpieces of engineering, short curved, layered with wood horn and sinew. They can fire accurately from horseback at terrifying speeds. Some sources say a skilled Mongol archer could loose 6 arrows in a single minute, each one a small feathered missile of doom. Historians still argue whether this rate of fire was truly sustainable in the chaos of battle, but the consensus remains: Mongol archers were basically the nightmare fuel of the 13th century. You're not given a bow, thank goodness. They've learned better than to trust you with sharp things. Instead, you're handed a leather quiver and told to carry spare arrows. You nod, trying to look useful. Someone snorts. The hunt is both serious and ceremonial. The Mongols respected animals but needed them to survive. Today's target: marmots. That's right, fluffy little steppe critters. Apparently they're plentiful this season, and the warriors treat hunting them with the same strategic planning you'd expect from a campaign against enemy troops. You mount your horse barely and wobble after the group across the plains. The cold air whips at your face and your fingers start to go numb despite the mittens. But the sky is wide, impossibly blue, and the ground rolls out like an ocean of gold. For a moment you forget how much your thighs hurt. Suddenly a rider ahead whistles sharply. The group halts. A marmot pokes its head from a burrow, curious and extremely unlucky. An arrow sings through the air and strikes just beside it, prompting the creature to dive back underground. Miss. The warriors laugh. You watch as the hunt continues, marveling at how the archers balance on galloping horses, twist mid-motion, and shoot with terrifying grace. It's like Cirque du Soleil, but with pointy consequences. Eventually, one of them hands you a slingshot-like tool and gestures toward a burrow. You squat, aim, release, and miss entirely. Your stone skips off into the void, probably still bouncing its way to China. The archer shrugs sympathetically and trots off. By midday, a few marmots have been bagged, skinned, and prepped quickly on the field. You're handed a bloody, slightly furred bundle and told to carry it back to camp. It drips onto your boots. You don't ask questions. Back at the GR, the marmot meat is boiled in a large iron pot with herbs and whatever vegetables are available. The result is more edible than you expect. Sort of like gamey stew with the texture of mystery. Here's your mainstream fact. The Mongols relied heavily on mobile herding and subsistence hunting. Their diet revolved around meat and dairy, and they could survive long periods with limited supplies thanks to dried curds, jerky-like meats, and fermented beverages. Now here's your weird one. Marmots, yes, marmots were not just dinner. In some parts of the steppe, marmot fat was believed to have healing properties. It was smeared on wounds, rubbed on joints, and even consumed to improve digestion. Yes, you almost just ate medieval icy hot. Dinner over, the warriors gather to play a game called shagai, a gambling game using dried animal knuckle bones. The bones are flicked, tossed, and arranged into patterns representing horses, camels, sheep, and goats. It's half game, half divination ritual, and completely beyond your understanding. Still, they let you try. You toss your set, and the bones clatter in a disappointing lump. The others chuckle, then one leans over, flips a piece, and mimes a horse galloping. You nod as if this clears everything up. It does not. Later, one of the elder women motions for you to help with felting. You sit beside her at a low table, pressing tufts of raw wool into mats, wetting them with hot water and rolling them tightly with a stick. The process is rhythmic, meditative, and strangely calming until your fingers burn from the scalding water. She notices, pats your hand, and gives you gloves, made of leather, probably marmot. Evening falls again, and the sky explodes into starlight. No city haze, no light pollution, just the universe raw and infinite. You sit outside for a moment, knees hugged to your chest, breath steaming like dragon smoke. The silence here is different, not empty, but full. Like the land itself is holding its breath. You head inside, utterly exhausted, legs, jelly eyes heavy. Someone hands you a cup of su te tsai, a warm, salty milk tea. You sip, expecting revulsion, but it's oddly soothing like broth met milk, and decided to stop fighting. You mumble thanks. Then the mat, the itchy blanket, the sigh as you settle in. You've survived another day, but your body, it's plotting revenge. You wake up to the unmistakable sound of someone vomiting outside your jeer. It's not a comforting start. The cold morning air seeps through the seams of the felt walls, and the heat from last night's fire is long gone. You sit up, rubbing the sleep from your eyes, and your breath fogs in front of you like a little ghost trying to escape. Your knees pop. Your back protests. You officially feel like you're 80. No time for slow mornings in the Mongol Empire. You're up, boots on face washed with ice-cold water from a skin sack, and out the door. Today you're helping prepare for a long ride and all-day trek to deliver messages between distant clans. This means one thing: you've been drafted into the Yam. The Yam was the Mongol Empire's legendary postal system. Yes, postal system. Genghis Khan didn't just conquer half the known world by shouting. He needed a way to keep communication flowing across a realm that stretched from Korea to Hungary. Enter the Yam relay stations with fresh horses and supplies every 25 to 40 miles. Think Pony Express, but way scarier and with more fermented mare's milk. Historians still argue whether the system truly functioned at full efficiency across all regions, especially in later years, but most agree that at its peak, the Yam was absurdly advanced for its time. You've been given a simple task: ride with the courier to the next station and help carry supplies. You'd hoped ride meant sit in the cart and nap, but no. You're on horseback again. Your thighs weep. Your travel companion is a wiry man with a face like a wrinkled leather boot and a mustache that curls dramatically despite the wind. He nods once, tosses you a package wrapped in oilskin, and gallops off like you should be keeping up. You kick your horse into a trot. It's not a smooth ride. Imagine trying to do yoga while someone throws water balloons at your face and you're halfway there. The plains are endless, just flat golden grass, distant hills, and skies too big for your thoughts. You spot herds of wild horses in the distance and twice mistake them for clouds. At one point you pass a skull half buried in the dirt. It looks human. You decide not to ask. For lunch, the courier tosses you a small leather pouch. Inside, dried curds known as arul. They're white, rock hard, and taste like what happens when cheese and chalk get married but never communicate. You chew for about 15 minutes and swallow like a champ. Hydration is horse sweat and what's left of last night's milk tea in your flask. Gourmet. Suddenly a shout. You look up. Riders, 3 of them approaching fast. You panic. Your courier raises a hand, then relaxes. They're allies. Or at least, not enemies today. The Mongol steppe is a shifting sea of alliances, families, and potential disaster. Hospitality rules are sacred, but you never know when someone will accidentally mistake you for a rival's cousin and declare blood feud. Mainstream fact time. The Mongols valued information as much as conquest. The Yam allowed for rapid deployment of military orders and intelligence, enabling the empire to respond to threats at impossible speeds. Messengers carried special tablets called paisas, granting them authority and priority. Your courier flashes one of these at the new riders. They nod, exchange news in rapid Mongolian, and ride off again. You pretend to understand. You do not. But you nod along, clutching the oilskin package like it's your passport out of this fever dream. By mid-afternoon, your legs have forgotten how to function independently of your horse. You wobble down at the next relay station, a small cluster of gurs and tethered horses. The local handler looks at you, snorts, and waves you toward a water barrel. You drink greedily, only to sputter salty. Not quite seawater, but definitely not Evian. Inside the station jeer a woman is boiling something on the stove. You recognize marmot again, but this time it's been stuffed with hot stones. Yes, hot stones. This traditional cooking method involves skinning the marmot, stuffing it with herbs and scalding rocks, then sewing it shut so it cooks from the inside out like some kind of furry pressure cooker. It smells amazing. You're slightly horrified. The courier slices some for you. It's greasy, chewy, and exactly what your body didn't know it needed. As you chew, he tells a story, something about a fox spirit and a cursed hill. You understand maybe 6 words. Still, you laugh at the right moments. He seems pleased. Quirky tidbit Mongol cuisine was full of inventive techniques, from sun-drying meat to fermenting dairy products into spirits. One Mongol drink, arag, is fermented mare's milk that fizzes like soda and punches like vodka. You are very much not offered any. Probably for the best. After a short rest, you're told it's time to head back. Not to your camp, of course. That would be too easy. Instead, a different path through the plains, checking for signs of other riders or potential raiders. Great. Nothing like casual surveillance to end your day. As you ride, the sun sinks low. Shadows stretch long. You pass a sacred ovu, a pile of stones adorned with blue silk ribbons. Your courier dismounts, walks a circle around it, and tosses on another stone. You follow suit, not entirely sure why, but deeply unwilling to tempt steppe spirits tonight. This time your return is quieter. No racing, no messengers. Just the sound of your horse breathing and the wind whispering secrets you'll never translate. You arrive back well after nightfall. Your body is liquid. Your brain is paste. You crawl into your mat, skipping dinner, skipping conversation, skipping everything but unconsciousness. And tomorrow you do it all again. The morning slaps you awake again with a rush of cold air and the unmistakable aroma of... Is that boiled sheep fat? You sit up, groggy joints clicking like medieval castanets. Your legs are still sore from yesterday's adventure with the Yam, and your back feels like it's been repurposed as a saddle rack. But alas, rest is not a Mongol luxury, it's more of a myth whispered between batches of fermented milk. Today you've been assigned a new duty. No more postal pony games. You're on kitchen duty for annoying a local commander of considerable importance. Basically, it's like being conscripted into a Michelin-starred nightmare kitchen, staffed entirely by people who think cooked is a matter of strong opinions, not temperature. As you shuffle toward the cooking area, really just an open space between tents with a fire pit and a few blackened pots, you're handed a knife that could double as a small sword. Your job: prepare the meat. Specifically, dismantle an entire sheep, with no prior warning, or instructions, or gloves. Mainstream fact-incoming Mongols relied heavily on livestock for sustenance, particularly sheep, goats, yaks, and horses. Mutton was a staple, often boiled in large pots with little more than salt. Vegetables, not exactly the stars of the menu. If you found a carrot out here, it was probably imported, and expensive. You stare down at the sheep carcass like it just insulted your family. Your new culinary instructor is a small, elderly woman with sharp eyes and sharper elbows. She shows you how to make the first incision, then leaves you to it with a curt nod. You begin sawing, hesitantly slipping once, and nearly giving the sheep a new ear. Eventually, with much awkward hacking and a few muttered apologies to the afterlife, you get the pieces ready for boiling. The pot is suspended over the fire using a kind of wooden tripod. There's no seasoning beyond rock salt, and maybe a slice of garlic someone dropped in as a joke. You taste the broth and confirm it is indeed as bland as it smells. Still, your fellow kitchen mates seem content. They sip their salty meat tea, chew greasy chunks of flesh, and debate who has the best goat in camp. You offer a smile and a thumbs up while your stomach prays for a misplaced spice rack. Quirky tidbit Mongols didn't waste a single part of the animal. Organs were boiled. Bones were cracked open for marrow. Even the head was roasted and served to honored guests who were expected to suck out the eyeballs without flinching. Today, thankfully, you're just scraping a sheep skull clean of tissue while a 6-year-old watches with great interest and zero judgment. Around midday, the Noyan himself arrives. He's broad-bearded and smells like leather and horse sweat. You stiffen as he sits cross-legged by the fire expecting, well, anything but what actually happens. He cracks a joke in Mongolian, laughs uproariously, and accepts the bowl of boiled meat like it's a 5-course feast. Then he belches like a war drum and nods in your direction. Respect, it seems, comes in the form of burps here. You're invited to eat with him, an honor and also, frankly, a trial. You sit cross-legged, trying not to wince as your sore thighs scream. He gestures for you to grab meat with your fingers. You do. It's hot. It's oily. It slips. You fumble and drop a chunk in your lap. He cackles. You laugh too, and the others follow suit. Congratulations, you've been inducted into the universal language of slapstick. Historians still argue whether Mongol meals were truly communal, or if strict hierarchies determined dining order in larger camps you recall from some dusty book. Based on the way the Noyan passes you another piece of meat and slaps you on the back, it seems today is a share and slurp situation. After the meal, the Noyan offers you a swig from a leather flask. It's Arag, again, fermented mare's milk. You brace yourself, sip, and immediately regret it. It's fizzy sour and has the unmistakable aftertaste of stable. You smile politely, eyes watering. He laughs again, satisfied. You're now officially part of the joke. You help clean up scraping pots with stiff brushes made of bundled horsehair. Dishes are rinsed with the same water used for washing hands. Sanitation is a group project, and immunity is apparently earned through trial by microbes. Later that evening, you join the others for another communal fire. This one is quieter, more relaxed. Someone plays a 2-stringed instrument called a morin kur, a horsehead fiddle. The sound is slow, mournful, almost like the wind itself learned to sing. You close your eyes and for a moment forget that your hands still smell like boiled sheep and you're wearing the same socks for the third day in a row. The stars are incredible, clear, brilliant like diamonds flung across a dark sea. A child climbs into your lap, curious about the strange folds of your jacket. You smile. He points to your belt, then your boots, then your nose, laughing at each like it's a punchline. You play along, miming exaggerated confusion. The fire crackles. Someone starts a story about a shape-shifting wolf. Everyone listens hushed. It's not glamorous, this life. It's harsh and dusty and smells like every animal you've ever met. But it's also oddly comforting. The routine, the directness, the way every part of the day feels purposeful, even if it involves biting into boiled lung. Before bed, you visit the livestock pen to check the sheep. One is giving birth. No one panics. The older children handle it while you just stand there amazed. Life and death are constant companions here, unflinching, unremarkable, and entirely normal. You crawl into your gyr exhausted again. You're sore, a little smelly, and you may never look at lamb stew the same way again, but somehow you're getting used to it. You wake up to the rhythmic thud of hooves. Not distant, dreamy hoofbeats in the sunrise. Nope, these are the urgent kind. You poke your head out of the gyr and immediately regret it. A sudden gust smacks you in the face with dust yak hair and cold air that tastes vaguely like someone's breakfast. Welcome to the world of Mongol herding. Today, your assignment is what the locals charmingly call animal tending. In practice, it's a chaotic ballet of hooves, horns, and loud bleats. Your job is to help move a small herd of sheep and goats from their night enclosure to fresh pasture, which sounds simple until you realize they have no interest in your authority. You're handed a stick not for hitting, but for guiding, and a set of vague gestures that supposedly mean left, right, and no please, stop eating my boot. The animals burst from the pen, like someone fired a cannon of wool and stubbornness. You stumble into motion trying to remember what side of a goat is the business end. Mainstream historical fact time. The Mongols' nomadic economy depended heavily on their herds. Livestock provided food, clothing, and trade goods. Sheep and goats were especially important because they could survive harsh climates and feed entire families. Nomadic life wasn't just about horses and conquest, it was about knowing exactly how not to get trampled by a wayward ewe. You quickly learn that goat logic defies reason. One decides it wants to explore a sand dune. Another circles you like it's planning a heist. You wave your stick like a confused conductor, and the herd responds by sitting down. All of them, simultaneously. A teenage herder watching nearby laughs so hard he nearly falls off his pony. You smile and give a theatrical bow. Eventually, the herd cooperates enough to be led to pasture. You're not sure if it's your skill or their boredom that makes it happen. Either way, you're grateful. You sit on a rock watching them munch contentedly while the wind whistles over the steppe. Then comes the real task milking. A stout older woman gestures you over with a wooden pail. You kneel beside a goat that gives you the side eye of doom. She squats down and demonstrates her hands moving in practiced rhythm. She fills a pail in under a minute. Then it's your turn. You try to copy her technique. The goat flinches. You apologize. She kicks. You flinch. Eventually, after a few false starts and a brief period of silent negotiation with the animal, a thin stream of milk trickles into the pail. Success. Sort of. Quirky tidbit Mongols believed fresh milk, especially from mares and goats, held spiritual energy. It was used in religious rituals and sometimes sprinkled on the ground to honor ancestors. Meanwhile, you just hope you don't spill any on your already questionable trousers. After the milking, it's cheese-making time. You watch the processed milk poured into animal stomachs or leather bags to curdle, then strained through cloth and left to dry into hard, sour blocks called arul. You're given a piece to try. It has the consistency of gravel and the flavor of pure determination. You chew politely while internally calculating how long it'll be stuck in your teeth. You help hang the cheese chunks on strings to dry. They look like some strange wind chime of calcium and suffering. Still, the locals snack on them like candy. One kid offers you another piece with a proud grin. You accept. Because how could you not? Historians still argue whether Mongol nomads actively planned their herd routes or simply followed weather patterns and instinct. You recall trying to look like you're thoughtfully chewing instead of desperately trying to swallow. Later in the day, a storm rolls in. The skies darken fast, and the wind whips up dust until you can barely see the horizon. Everyone springs into action. Animals are rounded up, tied down, or herded into makeshift shelters. You help hold a canvas flap closed on a supply tent, while a young woman lashes it down with ropes made of braided horsehair. The storm is short but violent. Rain slashes the earth, thunder rumbles like a distant drum circle, and the smell of wet wool fills the air. You're soaked cold and exhilarated. When it finally passes, the world smells clean, sharp, and somehow more alive. Night falls quickly. You huddle with the others in a warm jeer, now crowded with damp coats and steaming bowls of milk tea. Someone brings out a pouch of dried curds. Someone else tells a story about a fox spirit that tricked an entire clan. You lean back, listening to the low hum of voices, the quiet crackle of fire, and the occasional bleat from outside. You've learned more today than you thought possible: how to guide animals that hate you, how to milk without losing fingers, and how to appreciate cheese that could shatter a window. You also smell like goat permanently. Before sleep, one of the elders nods at you, says something in Mongolian, and chuckles. A younger herder translates, "You didn't die. That's good." You nod solemnly. Truer words have never been spoken. You crawl into your blankets, every muscle aching, every bone chilled, and every sense buzzing with the day's memories. Outside, the stars are back brighter than ever, and somewhere out there, your goat nemesis is probably plotting tomorrow's chaos. The next morning greets you not with a sunrise or bird song, but with the unmistakable odor of fermented mare's milk and the cheerful yelling of someone trying to chase a chicken. You blink yourself awake and remember two things instantly. You slept directly on the ground last night and your back knows it. The second, today you're expected to ride. Not a pony ride. Not a pleasant trot around a stable. No, today you must learn to ride like a Mongol, or at least survive the attempt. These people aren't just skilled horsemen. They practically are horses in human form. Genghis Khan didn't build an empire by walking, after all. A boy no older than 12 hands you the reins of a compact, muscled horse that looks at you with barely concealed contempt. It knows. It senses your doubt. This steed has carried warriors across frozen mountains and deserts. You once sprained your ankle falling off a stationary bike. You climb up with more optimism than grace, clinging to the saddle with knees that start shaking immediately. Mongol saddles are wooden with a high back and front, designed to keep riders secure during long journeys and sudden turns. But comfortable. Not a word that comes to mind. Your inner thighs are going to file a complaint. Mainstream historical fact. Mongol warriors began riding as toddlers. Horses were everything, transport status symbols, even sources of milk and meat. A typical warrior might own dozens, swapping mounts regularly to keep them fresh. You, on the other hand, grip your one horse like it's the last helicopter out of a war zone. A herder gives a signal. The horses move. Yours launches forward like a furry rocket, and suddenly the world is a blur of step and flailing limbs. You're riding. Badly, but technically upright. The group trots toward open land, and you try not to scream every time your steed changes gait. The reins are short, the stirrups high. Your knees are practically in your ears. Mongols ride standing slightly in the stirrups, absorbing shock through their legs. You try this and immediately regret it. Your balance is more inflatable car dealership mascot than nomadic warrior. The landscape opens up ahead of you. Rolling hills stretch into the horizon, dotted with shrubs and the occasional startled marmot. You focus on your breathing. The wind cuts across your face, and for a brief moment, despite the burning in your thighs and the unsettling creak of the saddle, you feel magnificent. Quirky tidbit. Mongol warriors used to play a game called kokpar, which involved riding at high speed while grappling over the carcass of a goat. Basically extreme polo with zero rules and infinite bruises. You are extremely glad no one has handed you a goat corpse right now. The group slows near a shallow stream. Your horse drinks, and you dismount with the grace of a collapsing bookshelf. The herders laugh not cruelly, more like they're used to city folk flopping like fish out of water. One offers you a drink from a leather flask. You accept without thinking, and then promptly wish you hadn't. It's Arag fermented mare's milk, sharp, fizzy, and with a mild alcoholic kick that goes straight to your nose. You try to smile appreciatively while your taste buds scream for mercy. The herders watch your expression like it's a sport. You raise the flask and toast to their health. They cheer. You're in. The sun climbs high, and it's time for target practice. Mongols weren't just riders, they were precision archers who could shoot behind them while galloping. You are handed a small, powerful bow and a few blunt-tipped arrows. Your task: hit a leather sack, swinging from a pole while cantering past. Easy right. Historians still argue whether Mongol archers used thumb rings to increase their draw strength or relied purely on technique. What's not up for debate? They were absurdly good. You line up, nock an arrow, and nudge your horse forward. The wind is in your ears, your fingers tremble on the string, and you let fly. The arrow spins wide, missing the sack by what you feel is a generous mile. One herder claps politely. Another points to the ground. You hit a shrub. It's dead now. Congrats. But by your third attempt, you land a glancing hit. You let out a whoop of pure joy. The group cheers. You're still terrible, but less so. That's progress. As the sun begins its slow descent, your body reminds you it was not built for hours of horseback riding. Every joint aches, every muscle twitches in protest. You dismount one final time, stumbling slightly, and hand off your horse with something close to reverence. That animal carried your clueless self across the steppe and didn't once throw you into a ravine. You might name your next pet after it. Dinner is earned and you eat like a champion. Boiled mutton, thick millet porridge, and another round of the dreaded arag. This time you sip it slower. A herder plucks a two-stringed instrument from the wall, the morin, kur, or horsehead fiddle, and begins to play. The sound is haunting like wind across an empty plain. It vibrates in your chest, delicate and ancient. The others hum along, some closing their eyes. You feel your own lids growing heavy. The stars outside are vast again, so many that it feels impossible they've always been there. You think of Mongol warriors watching these same skies, horses grazing nearby, weapons within reach. You think of a child handed a bow before they learned to riding across the plains as naturally as breathing. And here you are, sore, bruised, and probably permanently scented like goat. But you made it through the day. Not as a warrior, but as someone who tried and survived. You wake up stiff, sore, and still digesting the questionable milk from last night. Your legs ache in places that didn't exist before, and your spine has filed several formal grievances. The ground is frozen solid this morning, and it has not been a forgiving mattress. Today you're moving with a caravan, not a weekend camping caravan or a neat string of camels gliding through sand dunes. This is a mobile Mongol settlement on the move, and it's more like a chaotic parade of carts, livestock warriors, elders, and curious toddlers trying to pet everything with legs. The movement of the Mongol Empire wasn't just about battles and invasions. It was about logistics, massive living, breathing migrations that kept entire communities intact across thousands of miles. These weren't nomads in the romanticized solitary sense. They were professional movers of kingdoms. You're handed a rope attached to a yak. The yak does not like you. The yak is large, hairy, and emits a sound like a disgruntled lawnmower. It lurches forward, and you are dragged along like a clumsy accessory. Every few minutes, you trip on something, rocks, ropes, small children. The caravan waits for no one, least of all confused time travelers. Mainstream historical fact: Mongol caravans could cover up to 60 miles in a single day. That's more than your phone does when you forget to charge it. And they didn't have Google Maps. Instead, they followed river valleys, star positions, and incredibly efficient route memory passed down through generations. These people could find their way across the globe using a glance at the sky and a few hoof prints in the mud. You try not to fall behind. Easier said than done when your walking buddy is a temperamental yak and your boots feel like wet bricks. Occasionally, someone on horseback rides past and offers a word that probably means keep up, or possibly you look like a duck when you walk. There are carts rumbling by, creaking wooden frames, loaded with goods, grains, furs, tools, tents, and sometimes elderly relatives just chilling like VIP passengers. You see a girl about 8 years old balancing on the back of a moving cart, stitching fur into what looks like a glove. She doesn't miss a beat even when the road gets bumpy. You nearly twist an ankle trying to smile at her. The wind is relentless. You wrap your cloak tighter, but the cold still finds your skin. Mongol clothing is brilliantly layered, felt-lined boots, thick deals, those long tunic-style coats, and clever hats with ear flaps. Your outfit, on the other hand, screams unprepared tourist. You try tying your belt tighter like the locals do. It helps. A little. Quirky tidbit. Some Mongol travelers wore boots made of layers of paper between felt like medieval high-tech insulation. Not quite Gore-Tex, but it worked. The caravan pauses for a meal. Not a feast, just a quick, no-nonsense refueling. Everyone huddles beside carts or haphazard campfires. You chew on dried meat so tough, it could be repurposed as a medieval frisbee. But you chew it anyway because hunger trumps texture. You sit beside an old man sharpening a knife with a smooth stone. He doesn't speak your language, but he hands you a slice of cheese. It's hard, tangy, and surprisingly delicious. You nod your thanks. He grunts, then points to your boots and laughs. You pretend not to understand. As the day wears on, the road changes beneath your feet. What started as flat plains becomes a steady incline. The air is thinner. You're climbing. Mountains loom in the distance. You remember that the Mongol Empire wasn't one smooth patch of steppe. It sprawled across forests, deserts, rivers, and peaks. They had to move fast and light, always adapting. Historians still argue whether the Mongols had a formal supply chain or if their mobility itself was the supply chain. What's clear is that they had no patience for slowpokes. You try to pick up the pace. At one point, you pass a cart covered in felt and lattice work, a portable gyre being taken apart or rebuilt mid-journey. The precision of it is mesmerizing. Panels slot into place, ropes bind everything tightly, and somehow it becomes a sturdy shelter again. The Mongols didn't just carry homes, they reinvented mobility itself. Later, you find yourself walking beside a group of women with bundles slung across their backs. One of them adjusts your cloak for you, wrapping it tighter in a way that suddenly makes it far more effective. She smiles, says something that sounds vaguely encouraging, and moves on. You're not sure if she just blessed you or told you to keep up, but it felt supportive. You share the road with animals, goats, sheep, more of those judgmental yaks, and they all seem more sure-footed than you. There's no break from the sound hooves thudding, leather creaking, the low murmur of people conversing in a rhythm that seems built for endless travel. As the sun dips behind a ridge, the caravan finally begins to slow. You've walked for what feels like a decade. Tents are set up with clockwork efficiency. Fires spring to life. Children chase each other around bundles of wool and stacked saddles. And you collapse by a cartwheel, panting like a dog in summer. You survive the moving day of a Mongol caravan, barely. Dinner is warm, a stew, bubbling with root vegetables and strips of mutton. You hold the bowl close, inhaling steam, and the smell is somehow the best part. Around you, people laugh, eat, and prepare for tomorrow's journey, as if today wasn't brutal at all. For them, it was just another Tuesday. The stars arrive again, undimmed by city lights. They flicker above you like ancient promises. You look at the quiet horizon and try to imagine what it must have felt like to follow those stars, not just for days, but for months, through conquest, through storms, through generations. You don't know if you could have survived that life. In fact, you're pretty sure you wouldn't last a week without tripping over a goat. But you've earned your spot tonight. One blistered yak-wrangling step at a time. You wake to something warm and fuzzy pressed against your face. No, not a cozy woolen blanket or a purring kitten. It's a goat, chewing on your hair. You bolt upright, startling it into a dramatic leap over a pile of firewood. Welcome to morning number 2 in the Mongol Empire, where personal space is theoretical and farm animals have no sense of boundaries. Your joints crack as you stretch. Every part of you screams. The wind hasn't softened overnight. It's still a relentless, invisible slap. But the camp is already alive with movement. Fires crackle, pots clatter, and people speak in low rhythmic tones as they pack up the mobile world around them. Today you're learning what it's like to live under the rule of Chinggis Khan. Yes, that Chinggis better known in the West as Genghis. But here he's not a caricature of conquest and horse archery. He's the law, the system, the blueprint for how society works. You're about to learn that Mongol governance wasn't all galloping and swordplay. It was spreadsheets. Well, not literal spreadsheets, but the 13th century steppe version of ruthless organized control. You hear his name whispered with respect and a dash of fear. It's not just that he united the Mongol tribes or launched the largest contiguous empire in history. It's that he turned chaos into a machine. One fueled by rules loyalty and an alarming readiness to punish disobedience. Mainstream historical fact, Chinggis Khan created the Yasa, a secretive legal code that governed everything from theft to military discipline to how much food you were allowed to hoard during famine. It was oral, never written down in full, and enforced with terrifying consistency. You trudge toward the center of camp where a group has gathered. Today there's judgment to be passed. A man is accused of stealing a horse. Not a small crime here. That's basically grand theft auto plus kidnapping all rolled into one hooved package. You keep your distance but strain to hear. The crowd listens without interruption as the accuser speaks. Then the accused gets his turn. There's no shouting match, no cross-examination drama like in TV courtrooms. It's cold, quiet, and quick. The verdict, guilt. The punishment, not death, but exile. You watch as he's stripped of his belt and horse. 2 warriors escort him away. He doesn't beg or scream. He knows the rules. Everyone does. Quirky tidbit. In some cases, Mongol justice wasn't about imprisonment. It was about ostracism or shame. Being cast out was often worse than dying, especially for people whose entire survival depended on the community. Imagine being told, "Go live alone in Siberia. Good luck." There's a tense quiet afterward. You feel it like a chill under your skin. Justice here is swift but also surgical. No appeals, no loopholes. Just the rule of law as defined by a man who rose from an outcast orphan to emperor of the known world. Historians still argue whether the Yasa was purely legal or partly mythological, a blend of real laws and moral propaganda designed to elevate Chinggis's legacy. Was it a strict doctrine or a flexible tool? You suspect the answer is both. Later in the day, you're shown the basic expectations of behavior. Always share food. Don't step on someone's shadow. Yes, that's a real thing. Never wash anything in running water near a camp, it's considered sacred. Don't ever, under any circumstances, touch another person's hat without permission. You learn this last one the hard way. A young boy offers you a felt hat to shield your ears. You thank him and reach out to adjust it on his head, and suddenly his entire family looks like you just insulted their ancestors. You backpedal, literally. Fortunately, they laugh it off. But you've learned something vital. Cultural rules here are carved deep. That afternoon, you're taught another kind of order, the decimal system. Not the math one, though math is involved, but the social organization structure of the Mongol army. Everything is grouped by tens. 10 families report to a leader. 10 of those groups make 100, then 1,000. It's military meets bureaucracy meets family tree. Genius, really. You try to remember the name of the leader of your 10. Its long has at least 4 syllables, and you're pretty sure you've mispronounced it as something wildly inappropriate at least twice. The command structure works like a living web. Decisions flow fast. Loyalty is distributed across layers. If you fail, your whole 10 suffers. If they fail, it reflects on their 100. The accountability makes your stomach tighten. you're invited to eat with your 10 tonight. It's a humble stew of millet and goat with tiny slivers of dried fruit to sweeten it. The conversation flows in that easy rhythm of people who trust one another. They gesture for you to sit closer, to share, to listen. You do, and you start to realize something: this brutal, cold, rule-heavy society isn't designed to punish. It's designed to survive. Every rule is a reaction to scarcity. Every punishment a warning about community fragility. When there's no margin for error, order becomes sacred, and suddenly those harsh laws feel less like tyranny and more like a carefully stacked tower of survival Jenga. One bad pull and the whole thing collapses. By the time the stars show up again, the goat that chewed your hair has returned. You let it. Weirdly, you find the rhythm of its chewing kind of comforting. You curl into your cloak head full of new rules, heart surprisingly light. Because today you didn't just survive Mongol law, you understood it. The wind hasn't taken a day off. It never does. By now you've learned to sleep in short, shivering sprints. You wake to the smell of smoke and wool and the unmistakable tang of fermented milk. Not the dreamiest morning perfume, but it gets your eyes open. Barely. Today you're not dealing with law or livestock. Today you're going to war. Not the kind with cannonballs or polished armor. This is the terrifying elegance of Mongol warfare, a moving thunderclap of hooves, precision, and cold calculation. And guess what? You're expected to join a training ride. You start with a bow. It's about the size of your torso, carved from wood and animal sinew, coiled with a tension that makes your arms shake just holding it. Mongol bows are legendary, short-curved, and devastatingly effective from horseback. You, on the other hand, are more likely to shoot yourself in the foot. Your trainer, a stocky teen who can't be older than 16, shows you how to load, aim, and fire in one fluid motion. He hits a distant leather target without even squinting. You try to mimic him. The arrow sails sideways and narrowly avoids impaling a pot of curdled milk. The others chuckle. You pretend that was the goal. Mainstream historical fact: Mongol archers were feared across continents. Their composite bows had a range of over 300 meters and could pierce armor at close range. Riders trained from childhood to shoot accurately at full gallop in any direction, even backward. You're handed a bow and told to mount a horse, not the same as watching it in movies. Mongol ponies are compact, muscular, and slightly judgy. Yours snorts as you climb aboard, clearly aware you don't know what you're doing. Then it begins. You join a ring of 10 riders practicing a maneuver called the feigned retreat. The idea is to pretend panic, draw the enemy in, then turn and fire with deadly accuracy. It's part military tactic, part Oscar-worthy performance. You attempt the first run. Your horse trots obediently, then bolts as if sensing your fear. Your bow wobbles in your hand like a spaghetti noodle. You manage to let one arrow fly. It disappears into the horizon where it presumably starts a new life as a confused bush ornament. Quirky tidbit: Mongol warriors often carried multiple bows and up to 60 arrows in special quivers designed for rapid reload. They also used whistling arrows with holes that emitted high-pitched screeches to intimidate and distract. During a break, you're handed a strange snack-dried cheese curds called arul. They look like pebbles and taste like chalk with a grudge. You gnaw on one for nearly 10 minutes before giving up. The rest of the group casually eats them like popcorn. Back on the field, your 10 is now practicing coordination. You're learning how Mongols moved like flowing water across enemy lines, scattering, reforming, and circling. It's choreography by chaos. You realize this is why they could defeat much larger armies. They weren't just brutal, they were elegant. Historians still argue whether this level of coordination was drilled through formal training or developed organically through centuries of herding and raiding. Either way, it worked too well for many. You take a break, arms sore, throat dry. A boy not much older than 12 rides up beside you and offers a water pouch. You sip it, fermented mare's milk. You try not to gag and thank him anyway. He nods, then demonstrates a trick. At full gallop, he releases his reins, stands in the stirrups, and fires 3 arrows, 2 of which hit their mark. You clap. He bows with the smugness only a kid who can outshoot you blindfolded can pull off. That afternoon, you're allowed to observe a tactical meeting. Not a war council with flags and shouting, but a circle of warriors drawing lines in the dirt with sticks. They speak softly, using hand signs and nods more than words. They plan ambushes like chess moves. They teach you one basic formation, the tulugma, or enveloping maneuver. It's not just attacking, it's wrapping around the enemy like a rope. You imagine yourself caught in it. There's no way out. No wonder empires fell. As the sun dips low, the warriors return their horses to graze. You're invited to help rub down the animals, a daily ritual of gratitude. Mongol horses aren't just transport, they're extensions of the self. They sleep outside, eat hardy steppe grass, and can survive brutal winters with almost no shelter. And they never forget a face, yours especially. That night around the fire, the riders tell stories. Most are impossible to verify. One involves a man who allegedly shot an arrow straight through the eye slit of a knight's helmet at 200 meters. Another tells of a warrior who rode 3 days without sleep, then jumped off his horse and collapsed directly into a wedding ceremony. He married the bride, apparently. You laugh with them not because you believe every tale, but because for the first time you feel the rhythm of this life, the camaraderie, the code. But you also feel the weight of it. The training isn't just for survival, it's for conquest, for power, for making sure no one else forgets what it means to challenge a rider of the steppe. You look up at the stars. The sky is open, endless, just like the empire they're building. Tomorrow, you'll learn what happens to those who refuse to bend. But for now, your muscles ache, your fingers throb, and your heart beats in time with hooves you can still hear in your head. You've survived Mongol combat training. Barely. You wake up sore in places you didn't know had nerve endings. Every muscle protests as you roll off your bedding, just a stiff blanket over packed earth, and stumble to your feet like a puppet with cut strings. You're beginning to understand why Mongol warriors were feared. It's not the brutality, it's the stamina. You wouldn't last a single campaign. This morning you're being introduced to the reality of discipline under Mongol rule. And if you think discipline means a slap on the wrist, oh dear. Welcome to the big leagues. Your host, now affectionately nicknamed Grumpy Uncle Batar, pulls you into a group near the camp's center. Today's focus justice, Mongol style. Mainstream historical fact, Genghis Khan established a legal code known as the Yasa, which was famously strict and applied to everyone. Theft, betrayal, or disrespect could be punishable by death. And the Mongols didn't really do half measures. A young man is led forward, head bowed. He stole a goat his neighbor's. A serious offense here where livestock means survival. There is no trial in the Western sense, no powdered wigs, just a deliberation among elders and a swift ruling. The sentence, banishment. He'll be given a horse, some food, and exiled. A slow goodbye in the open steppe. Quirky tidbit. One clause of the Yasa forbade people from washing clothes in running water during thunderstorms for fear of angering spirits. Another required complete secrecy around the law's content. If you weren't high up, you didn't know all the rules. You watch as the man is sent off. He doesn't cry. He doesn't beg. He mounts the horse and rides. The camp doesn't jeer or cheer. There's a solemn silence, as if everyone is whispering a prayer to the endless grasslands. The next lesson is more hands-on enforcing discipline within the ranks. You're given a makeshift responsibility monitoring the night fire. It must never go out. Seems easy. It's not. By midnight, the wind is howling. You're swaddled in every available layer trying to keep the flames alive. It feels like being trapped in a snow globe while someone repeatedly shakes it. You nod off once, only for a second, maybe two. When you jolt awake, the fire has faded to glowing coals. Within minutes, Batar stomps over eyes like steel and bellows loud enough to scare the fire back to life. You're handed a shovel and ordered to dig snow pits to relight the fuel. Punishment by productivity. You get off easy. Historians still argue whether the Yasa was a fixed code or an evolving oral tradition adapted as the empire expanded. Either way, it cultivated unity and fear. Next, you're treated to a morality tale. A rider tells you about a famed Mongol general who disobeyed orders during a campaign in Persia. He returned home thinking his victory would excuse the disobedience. Instead, he was executed in front of his troops, not because he lost, but because he broke ranks. That's the Mongol brand of loyalty, unflinching and absolute. You try to imagine living like this full time. Every decision weighed against a code you're not allowed to read. Every mistake magnified. Every success expected. But there's admiration too. These people believe in fairness, harsh yes, but universal. A prince and a herdsman answer to the same laws. Genghis Khan famously once ordered the execution of a favored soldier for looting without permission. No favorites, no exceptions. During your break, you share salted tea with a few younger warriors. They ask about your world. You try to explain things like Wi-Fi and air conditioning. They just stare. One of them, the same boy who outshot you days ago, shakes his head and says, "Too soft." You'd die fast. You laugh. But you know he's right. As the sky turns bruised purple with evening, a final lesson is offered: loyalty rituals. You're invited to witness the swearing of fealty, an elite group of riders pledging their lives to a general. They slice their palms, press them together, and speak in low tones about honor, duty, and vengeance if betrayed. It's both beautiful and terrifying. You can't help but wonder, would you have survived here? Not just physically, but emotionally. Could your mind endure this blend of freedom and rigidity? They roam where they please, but they answer to one code, one leader, one destiny. You lie down that night thinking about the boy sent into exile, about the general executed for winning the wrong way, about the oath-takers bleeding into one another's hands. This isn't a place where you get second chances. It's a place where you don't need them, because if you mess up, there won't be a first. And as your eyes drift shut, the fire beside you crackles warmly, and your sore limbs remind you that you're not just a guest anymore. You're surviving step by blistered step. You wake to the sound of hooves, not the polite clip-clop of ceremonial ponies, but a stampede that shakes your ribs. It's not danger, at least not this time, but rather the Mongol version of breakfast prep wrangling the herd. Today you're not staying in camp. You're traveling with a small trade caravan escorting goods through bandit territory. Your assigned task: don't fall off the horse. Again. Your thighs are already screaming. The caravan consists of 3 carts pulled by oxen and guarded by a dozen riders, some grizzled veterans, some barely out of boyhood. There's a rhythm to how they ride loose in the saddle, but always alert. You do your best to blend in, bouncing like a bag of wet laundry with every jolt. Mainstream historical fact. The Mongol Empire established one of the safest and most efficient trade routes in history, the fabled Silk Road. With their tight control and terrifying reputation, merchants could travel from China to the Mediterranean under the empire's protection so long as they followed the rules. Still, the occasional opportunist or rebel tribe tried their luck. Your group is carrying bolts of silk bags of grain and a surprising number of pine nuts. You're told they fetch a good price in the next camp. You nod sagely, as if you know what pine nuts are worth, then spend the next hour Googling their taste in your imagination. Verdict: overpriced trail mix. As you ride, a shaggy merchant explains how Mongol trade wasn't just east-west, it was cultural. Chinese porcelain, Persian rugs, Russian furs, Arabic manuscripts all funneled through Mongol territory. You imagine a Mongol customs agent flipping through scrolls like a TSA officer checking for smuggled cheese. Quirky tidbit. Marco Polo, the Venetian traveler who allegedly spent years in Kublai Khan's court, may have exaggerated his stories or made some up entirely. Historians still argue whether Marco actually went to China or just interviewed people who had and stitched it all together with some literary glue. Around midday, your caravan stops for food. You help unload dried meat and fermented mare's milk arag. You've avoided it so far, but peer pressure's a beast. One sip and your taste buds spiral into existential despair. It's fizzy sour and tastes like someone dared yogurt to become evil. Still, it's better than the alternative boiled sheep fat served lukewarm. You chew slowly, smile politely, and mentally plan a week-long juice cleanse once you're back to modern plumbing. Suddenly, the lead rider stiffens. Dust cloud on the horizon, hands fly to bows. You're shoved behind a cart with the rest of the non-fighters. Your heartbeat hammers like a signal drum. It's a false alarm. Just another caravan smaller than yours. Tense nods are exchanged, greetings barked in overlapping dialects. Trade goods are compared, jokes swapped. You watch as 2 riders trade goats for medicinal herbs, then seal the deal with a quick horse race. Business Mongol style. As the sun dips, your group sets camp near a frozen river. Fires are kindled. Guards rotate shifts. You're handed a knife and told to make yourself useful. This involves dethorning wild shrubs for fuel and chopping onions until your eyes resemble boiled grapes. By now, the Mongols trust you enough to let you sit closer to the inner circle. Around the fire, stories flow like warm broth. One writer tells of a haunted hill where the ghost of a Goryeo soldier rides each night, still seeking vengeance. Another swears he once met a shaman who could turn arrows to smoke. You nod along, mesmerized. And then someone turns the conversation to your world. Electricity, planes, the internet. You try to explain TikTok and watch their brows knit into one massive communal wrinkle. Why would people watch dancing strangers on a tiny screen, someone asks. You respond with a shrug. Honestly, I'm not sure anymore. Laughter erupts. Not mocking, but warm. You're becoming more than an oddity. You're becoming one of them. Sort of. You lie down on your side that night, wrapped in goat hair blankets under a starlit sky so sharp and vast, it feels like you could fall into it. You realize this for all the fear and violence the Mongol Empire also offered connection, not just through roads and trade, but through stories, songs, shared hardship. There's beauty here beneath the grit. And as your eyes close, you're grateful not to be facing battle or exile tonight, just a cold nose, a full belly, and dreams painted in horse tracks across an endless steppe. You're getting better at this. Not great. Your saddle sores are developing their own personalities, but better. You no longer fall off the horse every other hour, and you can now wrap your deal with some semblance of authority. The nomads nod at you in passing a quiet acknowledgement that you're no longer completely hopeless. But today is different. You're being sent to Karakoram, the capital of the Mongol Empire, at least for a time. You squint into the wind as your escort crests a ridge and points out a low cluster of buildings in the distance. Karakoram isn't grand in the way of European stone cities. It's spread out, layered, and mostly made of wood, felt, and stone. But it pulses with purpose. It's not just a city, it's a hub. Mainstream historical fact, Karakoram, built by Ogadei Khan, was a cosmopolitan city that reflected the far-reaching grasp of the Mongol Empire. Artisans from Persia, architects from China, and merchants from everywhere in between helped shape its markets and temples. As you enter through a wooden gate, you're hit by the scent of dung fires, spiced mutton, and damp wool. Livestock weave between carts. Traders shout in half a dozen languages. There's a Chinese scribe selling calendars, a Muslim blacksmith hammering out stirrups, and somewhere a group of Russian musicians playing a tune that sounds suspiciously like a folk version of techno. You're ushered toward a central hall, less a palace, more a gathering house. Inside, stone columns flank a long table where officials argue over maps and scrolls. You sit near the back, trying not to sneeze on the parchment. One man draws your attention, robed in deep blue, silver-threaded cuffs, hawk eyes that scan like a ledger. He speaks sharply in Mongolian. Your interpreter leans in. He says the taxes from the western provinces are late. Again. You nod as if this is your problem now. Quirky tidbit. There's a 13th century account of a giant silver tree at Karakoram built by a French craftsman named Guillaume Bouchier. It dispensed fermented beverages from its branches. Yes, the Mongols apparently had a medieval beer fountain, and it wasn't even their weirdest invention. You're shown around after the meeting. There's a Buddhist temple with waxy candles and quiet monks. A Muslim quarter with narrow alleys and blue-tiled walls. Even a few Christian Nestorian churches, their icons dark with soot. It's dizzying, like someone mashed together 5 countries in one afternoon. And yet it works, mostly. Historians still argue whether Karakoram was ever meant to be a long-term capital or just a symbolic one more camp than city. Some say it was abandoned too soon. Others believe its job was already done by the time it faded. By midday, you're pulled into a secondary duty, sitting in on a trade negotiation between a Tibetan delegation and a Mongol general. You have no idea why you're here. Possibly someone mistook you for an envoy due to your recently acquired ability to not spill soup on yourself. The negotiation is tense. Gold for horses, horses for salt, salt for grain. Everyone wants more than they're offering. At some point, the Tibetan elder leans over and offers you what looks like a pebble wrapped in a leaf. You nod because saying no in this situation feels culturally ungraceful. You chew. It's yak cheese, aged, hard enough to chip a molar. You try to smile with dignity, but your jaw makes a sound like a tiny scream. The elder grins. Welcome to diplomacy. Later, as the sun dips low, you're given a moment to breathe. You walk through Karakoram's outer ring, watching children chase goats and traders haggle over spices. There's laughter in the air, frayed but real. A young woman offers you a painted token. Luck for travelers, she says. It's a coin with a sun carved on one side, a steppe hawk on the other. You tuck it into your belt. You sit near a shrine just outside the main compound, watching the wind lift ash and prayers into the sky. You wonder what it's like to live your whole life on the edge of permanence. A city made of breath and cloth and bone. A capital that could disappear in a week if needed. The stars start to rise early, brilliant, endless. You stretch out in the grass stomach filled with curdled milk and toasted grain, your brain filled with a dozen new customs and 5 awkward handshakes. Somewhere in the darkness, a horse snickers. You realize that you're not surprised anymore. This empire, vast, weird, relentless, it grows on you. Or maybe it swallows you and you just stop resisting. Either way, you close your eyes, knowing tomorrow you'll ride again. You're awake before dawn again. The yurt is silent, except for the soft breathing of your tent mates and the distant murmur of someone tending to morning fire duties. You step out into the crisp, pre-sunrise air breath, fogging in front of your face, and stretch. You've slept in everything from straw sheds to palace guest rooms by now, but there's something about the hum of a Mongol dawn that makes you feel like you're in the calm before a storm. Or maybe just the middle of a long, relentless hurricane that no one bothered to name. Today you're joining a group of imperial messengers, the Yam Riders. Mainstream historical fact. The Mongol Empire's communication network, called the Yam, was one of its greatest achievements. Riders used a relay system of way stations spaced across the empire, sometimes just 25 miles apart, to deliver orders reports and diplomatic messages with stunning speed. Think of it as the Amazon Prime of the 13th century, only with more horses and slightly fewer customer complaints. You swing onto your borrowed mount with only minor groaning and try to look confident. The other riders glance at you sideways. Your deal is half wrapped, your boots are untied, and you still haven't figured out where to tuck your gloves. Not a promising start. And yet off you go. The steppe rushes beneath you, an endless patchwork of brown and gray. Wind screams in your ears. Your body slams up and down with each gallop. You hold the reins in one hand and the precious leather-wrapped message pouch in the other like it's made of gold. It might as well be. The first relay station appears after hours of punishing speed. It's little more than a low hut and a fenced pen of horses, but to your aching thighs and dry throat, it looks like paradise. The next rider, already saddled, grabs your pouch, gives you a nod, and vanishes into the east. Just like that. You collapse into a heap, panting like a dog, wondering how these people aren't all just walking piles of cartilage and pain. Quirky tidbit. Some riders carried Paisa special medallions stamped with the Khan's seal. Flashing one of these meant you could demand fresh horses' food and lodging anywhere in the empire. Basically, it was the world's first VIP all-access backstage pass. Your escort lets you rest only briefly before continuing the journey, not to ride again thankfully, but to observe. You travel beside a senior official who inspects stations, questions local administrators, and checks weather reports like a medieval logistics manager. Every Yam post is part of a delicate web, and any delay, even a stolen saddle or a sick horse, could spark a breakdown. When communication is the glue holding 1,000 far-flung provinces together, missed messages mean missed invasions, missed taxes, missed opportunities. Historians still argue whether the YAM system was more efficient than comparable networks in other civilizations like the Roman cursus publicus or the Persian Angarium. What's clear is that the Mongols didn't just conquer territory, they wired it for speed. After inspecting a particularly run-down station, your guide frowns. Too few horses. Bandits, maybe. He doesn't elaborate. You try to imagine being a messenger here, 20 years old, galloping through a thunderstorm, carrying a slip of parchment that might contain the fate of a city. No GPS, no road signs, no time to ask for directions. Just the feel of the wind and the promise of punishment if you're late. You pass a broken wheel along the road, a smashed cart, and the skeleton of something that once had horns. You choose not to ask. Night falls quickly, as it does on the open steppe. You stop at a fortified relay outpost where the guards eye you suspiciously until your escort flashes a token. The fire inside is already lit, and a battered pot of milk tea simmers on the coals. You're handed a wooden bowl and fall into conversation with an older man who's missing 2 fingers and smells faintly of mutton. Ride long enough, he says, sipping, and the road starts whispering, tells you where the next hill is, where the wolves are hiding, when not to trust your own eyes. You pretend to understand. Later, wrapped in a fur you're fairly sure still contains traces of its original owner, you fall asleep listening to the howls outside. You dream of hooves and ink and messages too urgent to read. By morning, you're exhausted again, but in the now familiar way that suggests you might actually be adjusting to this life. Your hands are blistered, your feet numb. You haven't bathed in a week and your teeth are beginning to feel like they're fur-coated. And yet you're here, still standing. Which honestly is more than you expected back in Section 1, when merely opening a yurt door seemed like an Olympic sport. One more leg to go. The final challenge looms, a full military exercise. No more warm tea, no more diplomacy, no more excuses. Hope your legs are ready. You wake up to shouting. Not panicked or chaotic, this isn't an invasion, not yet, but the sharp-clipped calls of commanders giving orders. You sit up so fast, you nearly bonk your head on the yurt frame. Today is the day. Mongol military drills full scale, and you're going to be part of it, sort of. Not fighting, exactly. More like strategically observing. In other words, staying out of the way while trying not to get accidentally trampled by a cavalry charge. You fumble through your now mostly destroyed gear, finding your stiff boots and thick coat. Your breath fogs inside the yurt as you mutter through your morning routine. A bowl of gruel is shoved into your hands by someone who does not wait for thanks. You shovel it in anyway. You'll need the energy. By the time you step outside, the camp has transformed into an enormous moving organism. Tents, packed carts, loaded soldiers in rows, stretching far into the distance. Mainstream historical fact. The Mongol army wasn't just powerful, it was terrifyingly well organized. Units were broken into tens, hundreds, thousands, and tens of thousands. Every 10 men had a leader, and every 10 of those had a commander above them, and so on. Orders flowed down like water from a mountain, and discipline was absolute. You misstep, you pay, not metaphorically, with your life. Your assigned guide for the day, a weary officer with a perpetually unimpressed expression, leads you to a ridge where you can watch the troops assemble. The sun climbs higher, turning the steppe into a golden sea. You see archers on horseback, ranks of infantry supply wagons flanked by guards, even siege engineers testing out a catapult. Quirky tidbit, Mongol troops often carried fermented mare's milk arag for hydration and morale. You're handed a skin of it. It smells like regret. You sip. It tastes like someone dared yogurt to try being alcohol and failed halfway. And then the drills begin. The cavalry splits like ribbons across the plain riders, weaving in and out of formation with terrifying precision. Arrows fly in coordinated volleys, whistling overhead and thudding into distant targets, shaped like straw dummies and unlucky shrubbery. You wince every time someone gallops within what feels like inches of collision, but they never do. These aren't random charges. They're calculated, practiced, and choreographed like a deadly ballet. You can't help but imagine being on the other side of this army. How it would feel to see that dark wave roll toward you, dust clouds blooming beneath hooves, the sky practically screaming with arrows. You wouldn't stand a chance. No one did, really. Historians still argue whether the Mongols' success was more due to superior strategy or sheer brutality. Maybe it was both. But watching these formations unfold like a human chessboard in motion, you suspect their discipline was the real weapon. Steel is important, but unity. That's how you win empires. Midday, the commander waves you down. They're running a mock ambush next. You're told to climb aboard one of the smaller carts and just hang on. You do. The cart lurches into motion, pulled by oxen and accompanied by 10 men with curved swords and absolutely zero patience for your wobbly balancing act. The fake ambush springs riders bursting from behind a ridge with whooping cries. Your cart jerks to a halt as defenders leap off, form a shield wall, and counterattack with startling aggression. You're left clinging to the sideboard like a toddler on a theme park ride that wasn't cleared by safety inspectors. Afterwards, someone hands you a dried meat ration and slaps your back hard enough to dislodge a lung. Apparently, you did well, which in this context means didn't scream or fall off. High praise. As the sun begins to dip, the troops begin their disassembly with military efficiency. Fires are lit, tents reassembled, horses watered. You find yourself by a campfire with a dozen warriors who laugh loudly, drink arag like water, and keep handing you food until you feel like a roasted sheep. Someone strums a two-stringed lute. Another begins to sing an old song about a wolf, a storm, and a mother's warning. You don't understand the words, but the tone is unmistakable melancholy, and proud, soft like worn leather, fierce like wind. You realize you've been here for weeks. You haven't showered. Your feet are ruined. You haven't seen a chair in days. And yet, somewhere between the fermented milk, the throat singing, and the constant threat of death by horse, you've found rhythm. But let's be honest, you still wouldn't last a day without these people doing all the hard work for you. Try running 80 kilometers on horseback after fasting all morning, then firing an arrow behind your back while galloping away from an imaginary enemy. You'd be face down in the grass before you could yell, "I need a chiropractor." And now, as stars scatter across the night sky and the last embers of fire crackle beside you, it's time to drift towards sleep. The drill's over. You've survived the Mongol Empire. Barely. The fire's dim, and you pull your borrowed cloak tighter around your shoulders. The wind has calmed now, no longer whistling across the plain, but whispering low and warm like a breath on the back of your neck. Horses shuffle quietly nearby. A dog lets out a sleepy huff. The song is over, but the silence left behind feels like part of it. Above the stars are brighter than you've ever seen, scattered across the black in shimmering rivers, constellations, shifting slowly as the earth spins. You lie back against the packed earth, no pillow, no mattress, just the sky and the stories you've carried all this way. The dust in your hair feels like a crown. The ache in your limbs feels earned. And there on the edge of sleep you realize something strange. It wasn't the battles or the palace intrigue that stayed with you. It was the rhythm, the way life here moved with the land, the way silence and sound took turns like a breath in and a breath out, the way even exhaustion became a kind of music. Your eyes grow heavy, the wind softens, and in the distance you think you hear a rider pass, hooves muffled, carrying a message into the dark. But that's someone else's task. You've done enough. Sleep now.